Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ProLingua Global podcast. My name is Gabriella Ferenzi, and I run a language training company called ProLingua Global. And I run this podcast to talk with business people who have had their fair share of intercultural experiences, either in the corporate sector or when working for a small or a medium-sized business, or as an entrepreneur. In these interviews, you will hear them sharing their insights as to how understanding the language and culture of their partners, colleagues, clients has benefited them, their business relationships, and their company. You are now listening to Season 1, Episode 2, where I'm speaking with Hülya Muzammal. Hülya is an executive coach who specializes in career development. Her clients include senior managers and executives in high-demanding careers such as finance, banking, law, media. And Hülya is also the founder of Zen Professional, a training and consultancy company, and her aim is to empower professionals to achieve their full potential in their careers and have a fulfilled life. Hülya has a background in investment banking, wealth management, and over 15 years' experience in senior management roles, working internationally in major financial institutions such as UBS and Commerzbank. Hülya had a very interesting career path in finance, which took her all across Europe, from Istanbul to Switzerland, Dublin, and London. And she's based in London now. Her English is clearly fantastic, as you will hear. And in our conversation, Hülya reflects upon how she learned English as a foreign language and how living abroad has influenced her native tongue, Turkish. Now, as a coach herself, she has got some very hands-on advice on how to tackle confidence issues, because we need to embrace the fact that as we learn a new language, we are not going to say things perfectly, yet we have to express ourselves somehow. And Hülya also talks about her experiences about different business cultures and attitudes, and how Turkish people do business as opposed to the Irish or the English, for instance. At the end of our conversation, we talk about some of our favorites English words and expressions. So now, without further ado, here is my interview with Hülya Muzammal. Right, Hülya, welcome to the ProLingua Global podcast, and thank you very much for accepting my invitation to be interviewed here.
Thank you, Gabriella. It's my pleasure to be joining you this morning in your podcast, and thanks for inviting me.
I'd love to be able to pronounce your name properly. So is it Hülya?
It's actually much better than anyone in this country can ever pronounce it. Yes, it's Hülya. I have got like double dots on the U, like a German letters. Yeah. So it's Hülya, yes.
Perfect. So I already introduced you in the little intro section to the podcast, but I'd love you to introduce yourself as well. What is it that you do?
Yeah, thank you very much. I spent, to be honest, most of my career, my professional life in finance and banking sector for over 15 years, mainly banking. In investment banking, in wealth management, asset management, treasury management, foreign exchange trading. So various areas of banking. So I worked internationally in corporations such as Dresdner Bank, Commerzbank. UBS was my last employer. Wow. And I worked internationally in Istanbul, which is my hometown, Dublin. Then I moved to Dublin. That was my journey, working internationally. Then I moved to London. And for a bit, I traveled between Switzerland and London. So for over 15 years, yes, I've been in banking. And due to family reasons, I left banking and I trained as a personal transformational coach and neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. That sounds like a mouthful. It's not as complicated as it sounds. So now I have got my own executive coaching and career consultancy business, Zen Professional, that aims to work with professionals in high demanding careers such as finance and banking, law, media, and entrepreneurs who wants to achieve their full potential in their career and wants to live a fulfilled life. So that's the path I decided to take in 2014. And so far, I'm enjoying the new journey. And here I am talking to you.
Wow, very nice, very inspiring journey. And you are based in London, right?
Yes, I've been living in London for quite a long time now. It's been over 16 years now. Yes, and I'm based in London. London is a great city. You never feel foreigner. That's what I feel like. I don't know how you feel like, but
Yes, totally the same, to be honest. Yeah, this multifaceted city with so many different languages, so many different cultures. I really try to embrace it and learn as much as possible. You know, even with Uber drivers or anyone I meet, really, it's always a question about, you know, languages and cultures and where we are from originally, etc. There is something that I really like about it.
brilliant. No, I totally agree with you. And that makes us rich as a human being to
Mm,
get to know each other. So I'm totally with you on that, Gabriela.
wow. Now, you just mentioned that it was your corporate background that actually brought you to London, but that you have traveled so much. And I must notice that your English is fantastic, although I know that it's not your native tongue. What do
Thank,
we need to know here?
thank you. Yeah, my mother language is Turkish. As I was born and raised in Turkey. I mean, I've been living in this country for 16 years. Thank you very much for complimenting my English, but I still sometimes feel like when I open my mouth, when people ask me where I'm from, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But yeah, it's been a long time, and traveling and working in multinational environments obviously helped me to improve. And as you mentioned, I'm always interested in knowing the other people. So when I come to London, I made an effort to mix with as many different cultures as possible.
Mm.
So that gave me the opportunity to practice my English.
How did you learn initially? Like, did you learn as a child at school or later on in your adult life?
English is one of these languages that in every country that you somehow need to learn. So I started learning English. Well, how old I was? I wasn't that young, but maybe like high school age.
Uh-huh.
Started learning, taking some English classes, but to be honest, it was very basic in the high school. But when I started university, the university that I attended, which was in Istanbul, but the education was in English. It was an old American college. So sometimes people think that I speak with an American accent as well, because we had loads of American professors and also watch lots of American movies, as we all do. um, so yeah, high school and university years mainly started learning English. But how I improved is definitely after I started traveling.
Right. Yeah. So traveling, it does play a huge bit. But so let me take you back in time just a little bit. So starting to learn English in high school and then actually reading a subject at university. I think that requires a different level of English. So, did you take any preparation courses perhaps in order to prepare for university studies in the English language, or how did you manage this transition?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It was a challenge.
Hmm.
There was a preparation course for a year to take to learn the English language, but studying a subject in English is a different level, exactly as you said. So the first year of my studies was a challenge for me. Although I could speak like day-to-day English, my subject was computer sciences. So studying that in English was quite a challenge. So it took me a while, but it's a matter of time, and it's a matter of practice with the language. And it's a matter of being persistent.
Although
So
one would assume that, you know, computer sciences, that's, well, there is quite a lot of English terminology anyway, but still, when it comes to reading those books and going through the training material, yeah, I think it's sort of like an immersion experience where you really dive into it, immerse yourself with the language, with the help of the professors and the books, etc. And yeah, somehow you just have to find a way. It's like in a deep water, you have to find a way to swim.
yes, it's not easy though. It's a challenge. I must admit that as I said, it was challenging. But if you're persistent and if you keep practicing, what I realized with some of my schoolmates or classmates, they were being shy. I don't know if you noticed that I'm not that shy. And so some of them were being shy and holding back, talking
Yeah.
to the foreign professors and etc. But I think it's a matter of, even if you know that you're not talking perfect, the trick there for me was to keep going at it, even though you know that whatever you say is not going to come out as perfect.
Yeah, I guess confidence is a huge thing in when it comes to learning a language, and in many different areas of life as well, and business. But when you start to learn a language, I guess it's inevitable to make mistakes, and it's inevitable to say sentences that will not be perfect. And immediately, a native speaker would be able to see that you are, you know, you are from somewhere else, or that you are making mistakes. So confidence is a huge thing, and I think overcoming this hurdle of not being able to speak properly but still trying, that's a huge thing.
Absolutely, that's my experience, and that's what I thought was helpful in
Wow.
order to improve myself. Yeah.
So it's just going for it and keep at it.
Yeah, and be persistent and don't be shy. I mean, we are always very like self-aware, especially when we're talking in a foreign language and especially when we're learning. Because what happened to me was I was thinking in Turkish in my head, and I think that's what happens to most people when they first start to learn a language, and then translating it into English and then talking. So it's a process in your brain that you have to process many things.
Yeah.
But then after a while, it becomes, you don't do that anymore. You just open your mouth and it just comes in English or in Turkish the same way. But you have to pass through that process to come to that, you know, competent level in English or whatever the language that you're learning.
Yeah. And any other languages apart from Turkish, your native tongue, and then English as a foreign language? Did you learn anything else?
Well, I had a very failed attempt at learning French. And then I realized that I cannot pronounce any word in French. I had an attempt at learning Japanese, actually, which was quite interesting because Japanese and Turkish comes from the same language family. The structure of the language is very similar. So for me, learning Japanese is easier than learning English. So
Wow.
I speak basic Japanese, and yeah, I'm quite interested in learning different languages, but Turkish is quite a specific language family. So for me, learning English was a challenge. French, I didn't even go there after a few lessons. But yeah, Japanese is quite interesting, and I would like to continue with that actually.
But it's also like when it comes to Japanese, I would assume that it's not just language-wise, you are saying that it's similar to Turkish in terms of the structure. Um, but is there anything like what made you learn Japanese in the first place? Because I'm trying to get to the point of culture and cultural differences, but I'm curious why Japanese? Did you like in your corporate background, was there a point where you felt the need to learn Japanese?
That was again in my university years. And as you are, I was quite interested in learning different cultures. And the Japanese lady was giving the Japanese classes and also teaching about the culture as well as the language. But I also thought that I always knew that I was going to be in a corporate environment. So not in academics or any other thing. I was thinking more corporate. And Japan and Turkey has got a lot of trade relationships in it, and for years in the history. So I thought that lots of people can speak maybe French or German. I thought that that would give me an edge in the corporate world. That didn't work that way, but it could have. There has been, people in my university who learned Japanese and went on to work with Japanese companies and Japanese businesses. It didn't work that way for me, but that was the idea behind it, because I believe that the languages definitely gives you an edge in business, in corporate, whatever you do. So who knows? I will continue with my Japanese and we'll see what it brings me.
Do you find it challenging now? Well, of course, you reached a certain level in English, and I would assume that it's no longer about conscious studying the language, but more about being exposed to it on a day-to-day basis, watching TV and listening to podcasts and conducting, meetings and coaching sessions in English. But is there any a more conscious way how you are trying to maintain the level you have achieved, or perhaps, I don't know, build upon it? Not in my case, I have to say, because after I reached, when it comes to formal education, I did learn English at school with less success than with some private tutors in my 20s, with a bit more success. I feel that nothing really could have prepared me for what was waiting for me here in London. And since being here in London, I haven't really made a conscious effort to learn the language with the help of a teacher or a language coach. I'm just trying to immerse myself as much as possible. Like, how did you deal with coming over here to London and also Dublin and Switzerland? I'm sure it was again English that you would use as a common language.
To be honest, at the beginning, especially in Ireland, due to the accent, they with a different dialect, totally different dialect. So it was a challenge. Yes, I've learned English, I've studied in English, but going somewhere and in a foreign country and working there is a totally different experience. So when I first came to London, first of all, I worked with a language coach in English. The company I worked with hired a language coach for me, which was very useful, actually. And mainly what we were doing was having conversations on a week-to-week basis. So this improved my conversational English a lot. Already, like, my writing English was okay, because at school, we were doing papers and etc. Everything was in English. But conversational business English, working with a language coach, helped me a lot at the beginning.
Did you work with a language coach like on a one-on-one basis?
Yes. It was on one-on-one basis. She was a lovely lady, and she was making me so comfortable, and that boosted my confidence a lot in meetings, in social outings with my colleagues. So that was a money well spent, on my company's behalf and on my behalf. But also, as you said, watching television. I'm not a big television, addict or that sort, but I do give that advice to my friends or my kids in Turkey. Watch television, watch movies without subtitles in your own language. Even if you don't understand the first few times, again, being persistent will help you. Reading books. I read a lot in the subject that I was working in, finance, to make myself familiar with the terminology. Again, there's a lot of terminology. Working in Istanbul in finance and working in London in finance are different things. So I read a lot. But I also socialized with, not with the Turkish community here, with the other communities in my environment. So all of those things, to be honest, it takes an effort.
Yeah. When we moved over here, I found it also quite important to socialize indeed with with locals, with Brits and with all the other cultures apart from Germans and Hungarians, in order to really learn as much as possible. But at the same time, I've also found that it was very helpful to watch TV indeed, and it wasn't just because of the language, but also because when you go out and you hang out with people, all these conversations come up like, did you watch this program or that program on TV? And I felt that I didn't really know what they were talking about, even though these TV programs really seemed to be part of the British, culture, like everyday culture. And so we bought a TV and we started to watch, and we started to have some favorite programs like Strictly Come Dancing or The Apprentice or, all these TV series. I'm not really into, like soap operas or anything like that. But these sort of series, I found them really, really great in terms of language, but also in terms of topics that I could talk about with British friends and colleagues. And so I felt a bit more, part of the culture here.
Absolutely, Gabriela. As I said, it's about making the effort and being friendly and being open to the other cultures. Definitely makes the difference in terms of speaking the language, because when people sees that you're making an effort, they also make an effort to speak to you, to improve you in any way, or to help you. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Now, Hülya, Istanbul, Dublin, Switzerland, London, I mean, you have traveled a lot. You've traveled a lot and you have seen a lot. So English was the common language throughout your corporate career, I assume.
Yes.
Or was it like Turkish companies perhaps that were placed in these cities?
My job in Dublin was to set up the office of the Turkish bank that I was working for in Istanbul. So I was sent to Dublin to set up the offices, their offices. So day-to-day basis, I was talking to my Turkish colleagues in Istanbul, and then I was dealing with the Irish authorities in English. And the staff there that we were hiring in not Irish, sorry, English, Irish English. I was, but I also worked with Turkish clients when I was working in London. So mainly on a day-to-day business, Turkish clients want to work with, let's say, UBS, have an account at UBS, but they want to speak to their own language. So then I come to, the equation and take the client's orders or instructions, then go and speak to various different departments and deliver whatever the client is asking for, or closing the deal, basically, with the relevant departments.
Now that's a very interesting experience, like from A to Z. You've seen a lot, and I'm really wondering what your experience is about working with Turkish people and working with Brits. So, was there something that you found strange or a bit unusual when doing business in Dublin or in London or in Switzerland? So, was there something for you as a Turkish lady that you had to get used to a little bit?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, my first experience was with a German bank actually in London. It was Dresdner Bank, now it's Commerzbank. And I was sitting next to my boss, who happened to be a German, young German gentleman. But his main communication was through emails. Even though I was sitting next to him, he was sending me emails, the instructions via emails, which I found really interesting because the business in Turkey is mainly about being social, talking to people. You just pick up the phone and say, okay, you know what? I have got an idea. I have got this deal. Meet me at the coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just meet for coffee. You talk about business for 15 minutes and then talk about something else, like talk about your kids or talk about what you did last night. But he was sitting next to me and sending me an email. I was taking it a little bit personal. I thought like, he doesn't like me. He just doesn't want to talk to me. But then I realized that's not me. That's the way of doing business in that environment. That was the company culture, because the way it works is that everything has to be written. Then when I don't complete the instructions, then at least they will have, okay, I gave you these instructions, that's recorded, it's in your email, so I have done my part, and then you need to respond the same way. Mm-hmm. So I started to learn this way of doing business. So it was an interesting experience for me to someone sending me an email sitting next to me, but then I started to understand the logic behind it and get myself used to it.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's one of the key things. Like first, perhaps you find it a little bit unusual, and there comes a point where you may take it a bit personally.
Yes.
If you're really aware that, it could be the company itself and the company culture, or B, it could really be, the international environment and an international culture that you would have to. So as long as you keep an open mind and try to see the reason behind all these unusual bits and pieces when it comes to communication, I think that helps a lot to overcome these hurdles.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And in terms of dealing with British people, it's in terms of, again, it comes to the language.
Mm.
So when I first started learning English, or come here and start working, before I started working with this language course, I realized that some of my friends were finding me a little bit rude or a little bit too direct.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So with the British way of doing it is that you cannot be that direct. You need to speak in a certain way, in a proper way. So if you want to say something to somebody, you just have to go about in a certain way. So actually recently I've seen it somewhere. It was a post in some social media somewhere that I'm not rude, I'm Italian. There was a post like that. So at the beginning, I think I was coming across very direct and maybe rude.
And did you find, like, when you were based in Switzerland, for example, did you find that this, directness was not that unusual over there, or do you find that it's mostly here in England or in Great Britain where you have to be a bit more careful with how you say things and what you say? Like, was it a similar experience in Switzerland or less so?
I think I would say with the Switzerland and dealing with in a Swiss company environment,
Yeah.
definitely less so. But still, if we can put like the Turkish way of doing stuff and British way of doing stuff, so Swiss way of doing stuff is like maybe somewhere in between.
Mm.
Not so much of being in Britain.
Right. Yeah, there is this interesting book by Erin Meyer, I think she's called. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, Erin Meyer or Meyer. And she's got this book called The Culture Map. And she talks about scales, like from 0 to 10, you know, in terms of directness and many other things and many other factors that come into play. And the more further apart two languages and two cultures are from each other, the more conscious effort we have to put into trying to understand the other person and trying to respect the way they do business, and this way trying to get closer to them, I guess.
Mm-hmm,
So I
mm-hmm.
guess it's a scale, that and certainly that was my experience as well, and that's what I was assuming you would answer when it comes to Switzerland, that it's a bit less well, it's still formal, I would say, but perhaps you can be a bit more direct, whereas here it's best to beat around the bushes a little bit, just a little bit, before you actually get to the serious stuff.
Definitely. I mean, even in writing, as I said, my written English was fine, but then I still needed to learn how to send an email to an executive or a manager, because you have to first write, hi, hope you're well, I hope your weekend was okay. So a little bit of small talk, which is, for example, in Turkey, we don't do that much of a small talk. We can just go like, hey, I need that by tomorrow. So, and it's not rude.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about the small talk, but it wouldn't be small talk for small talk's sake because we just want to talk. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I feel that the further to the east we are going, the less relevant or important it is to have this small talk. First, let's do the real conversation. Let's talk through why we are here, and then we can chill out and hang out a little bit. Whereas the more to the west we are going, I think it's the other way around. But I'm not sure if that's if that's a representative survey, but that's just my experience.
No, definitely. I mean, especially the northern European countries.
Mm.
Well, I worked in Ireland and England, but maybe Ireland is even northern to England. But yeah, Irish has got a different culture. For example, in Ireland, you need to go out with your colleagues for a drink. So it's a must in terms of doing business there, and you need to drink Guinness.
Mm.
Whereas over here in Britain, I didn't feel that pressure that much. But definitely there is a certain way of using the language in your written communication. And also, when you're talking to somebody, you cannot be as direct. You need to use your pleases and thank yous. And yeah.
Is there something specific about the way Turkish people do business, for example, when it comes to meetings and timing? Like what's okay and what's not okay? Do I have to be like 5 to 10 minutes early at the meeting, or shall I come just on time, or is it expected to be a few minutes late? Like, is there something specific about this?
Well, definitely, as you mentioned about going towards the east, I think just on time and being a little bit late is a fashionable thing to do,
Uh-huh.
because you're early, people don't respect you so much, but if you're late, you become a little bit more important person. So
Ah,
this is the cultural perception.
uh-huh.
So, um, and in terms of, yeah, it's quite relaxed, to be honest. That's what I had to learn here, for example. There's more hierarchy here in the meetings. Like, for example, if your boss is at the meeting, then you have to let that person to speak. But in Turkey, I didn't feel that pressure. Like, if I had something to say, I felt more relaxed, even if my boss was there, that I could voice my opinion.
Mm.
But over here, you need to be a little bit more careful about the hierarchy. So, in that sense, I felt that it's a little bit more relaxed.
Mm.
And there is also, because the communication, the people communicate with each other in a more relaxed way, the meetings don't go on for forever.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can happen here. Because if you need something, you can easily just drop by at their desk and say, hi, you know what's going on with that project, so you already told nitty-gritties of it.
Yeah.
But over here, you need to wait until the meeting and then bring it to the agenda. Does it make sense? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I found that it's more formal
Mm-hmm.
in terms of meetings, and over there it's more relaxed. So
Oops, okay, we got a bit disconnected, but so you are saying that it's changing a little bit.
yeah, I mean, in business, because the more globalized the world becomes, the people get used to doing business with different cultures,
Mm.
and then maybe they adopt the things that they think is better, like, for example, being on time for a meeting, or being prepared for a meeting, or having an agenda for a meeting. They thought, actually, you know what, we had this meeting with these English guys, and it went really well, so we were all on time. And yeah, we had an agenda, we followed the formal agenda. So the more globalized the world becomes, the cultures integrate
Mm.
and change, but obviously not totally change, but people adopt themselves. I think this is the world we're living in now.
Really interesting. And I just had this idea of asking you about superstitions. Like in certain countries, there are certain things that you shouldn't do or you shouldn't say because it brings bad luck. Like one example, I can't really tell you an example in my native cultures and languages like German and Hungarian. I can't really think of anything, but I know about China and the number 4. Like, is there something in Turkey that if anyone wants to do business over there, should really avoid doing or saying? I'm not sure.
In terms of language, I cannot think of anything on top of my head.
Mm.
But obviously, the Turkish culture is very family orientated.
Mm.
And if you're doing business with somebody, it's the best practice to ask them about their family.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And get to know them and give your respect to understand whether they have got kids, how old are their kids, are they married, are they single, if they've got elderly parents. It's a very family orientated culture. So I think it's the best practice to, if you want to do business in Turkey, get to know people and their families and connect with them in that sense. They would like that. But in terms of what not to do, I mean, respect is, yeah, very high on the values in terms of culture. So you need to be relaxed, but also respectful.
Yeah.
That's I can think of.
Do you know any foreigners who have learned Turkish as a foreign language?
Yeah, there is a lot of expats living in Turkey.
Yeah.
Some of them managed really well in some of the environments that I worked with, in the banks, for example. because we were doing a lot of business with London. We had some English colleagues who mastered the Turkish really well, and these people actually went far in the company because they made a difference. They made an effort to
They made an
understand.
effort, yeah. They made a difference by making an effort, I guess. And
Absolutely.
oh, wow. What would be your advice, like, to anyone wanting to learn Turkish? I know it's your native tongue, and it's hard to give advice about our native languages, like how to learn it. But for example, when it comes to German, my advice would be to keep an open mind um, when it comes to formality and hierarchy. When it comes to Hungarian, I usually say that, just just learn the basics first, because even if you just say hello and goodbye and thank you very much, you definitely go through to people's hearts, because it's such an unusual language for foreigners to learn, that Hungarians are very appreciative. If you just say hello, they are completely taken by it. Like, what about the Turkish language? What could you say?
It's very difficult language to master. That's what I realized actually, and through my kids as well. I'm trying to teach them Turkish. But what I would say is the main thing for me, as I said, first I was thinking in Turkish and then translating it to English. And I was trying to understand the grammar of English. Um, so the advice I would give to someone who wants to learn Turkish or another language that doesn't have the same sentence structure as in English is not to worry about the grammar first. Like how you say, just learn how to say a few basic things and just say them as they are. So do not overthink, just go and speak. However it comes, doesn't matter. Even if you're making a mistake, people will appreciate you, as you said.
Yeah.
So I was overthinking at the beginning, so that was the struggle for me.
How is your Turkish now? Now that you've lived such a long time away from your country.
Then it's embarrassing actually. Last week, no, the week before, I was at an event and I need to speak in Turkish to the Turkish. It was a community event here.
Yeah.
So I was one of the speakers, and obviously the event is in Turkish. It took me quite a long time to prepare. I needed to, like, for example, record myself and listen to myself because I needed to correct my Turkish, which is, I came here when I was 29, so you can tell my age now, knowing that I'm here for 16 years. But it's not deteriorating, but for example, I will go to Turkey in summer. I know that the first week will be a challenge. I would be like, what was the Turkish for that? And people think that you're a snobby person. But after a week, it's fine. After a week, it's fine.
It just takes some time to get used to it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just being putting yourself out there, really.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I have the same experience, and in my case, it's 3 languages that that my life evolves around, and it takes some time to adjust myself, indeed. But eventually, I think I learned to separate, when to talk which language, and but I do find that one has an effect on the other, and I'm certainly looking for words, not so much the grammar and the structure, I guess, but it's certain words that I'm just completely unfamiliar with, and also certain phrases, like when the English would say I'm very busy, there is not one word for busy that I would say either in German or in Hungarian.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's really fun, because so when we talk, with each other, either with my husband or with friends from Germany, then we just say, yeah, I am, and then we use the English word busy, because it just feels more natural, and that's not the way we would say it in our native language. So yeah, one does have an effect on the other, I'm afraid.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, I do find it challenging as well, and especially now it's been so long for me to study, lived, and worked in English my life. Like, speaking at an event in Turkish is more challenging than speaking in English. It's a mindset thing, I think.
Yeah, we keep getting back to this. It's true. Do you have a favorite English phrase or an English expression or a word, maybe?
Well,
I've got one while you are thinking.
okay, go ahead then.
For me, it's this spring flower called dandelion. So they say in English dandelion, and it's a very common flower in Germany and in Hungary, and in Europe, I would say. And I thought that the correct way to pronounce it was dandelion. And I thought that it was such a nice word until a student of mine actually pointed out that, hello, it's not the right way to say it. It's a dandelion, and it's the lion's tooth or lion's teeth. I think it's a beautiful flower, and I think it's a beautiful name as well.
The pronunciation, some words are really strange. Like, for example, the same as you, when I came here, the Leicester Square, I was saying Leicester Square or stuff like that.
Exactly, or Gloucester Road.
Same here. So I do see that. I mean, in terms of saying, I can think of something, but I'm not sure if it would be appropriate for this podcast. But in Ireland, when I first heard the saying, I'm as happy as a pig in...
And what's that? ...
You know, when pig is the most happiest in some dirt. So that was this saying that I thought is really funny. And then I kept saying that I'm as happy as a pig in, I will use dirt here. So yeah, I can think of that one.
Interesting. It's funny.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Hülya, anything else you would like to share before we wrap up? Because I've got a quick fire 10 questions for you.
Okay, all right. No, that's fine. I think I really appreciate what you're doing in terms of researching on the cultures and languages and bringing people together. So yeah, thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to be a part of it.
Thank you very much indeed. Now listen, London or Istanbul?
Istanbul.
Hey, beer or cider?
Cider.
Turkish coffee or Americano?
Turkish coffee.
Earl Grey or English breakfast tea?
Earl Grey.
With milk or without? How do you drink it?
Without milk.
Without milk. Okay, I started to drink with milk now and I love it.
All right, I'll give it a go.
Now, vindaloo or korma?
Ooh, Vindaloo.
Is it? You like hot?
Oh, absolutely. Bring all the spices for me.
Volleyball or football?
Oh, volleyball.
Is
By
it?
far, yes.
Now, the next question, Chelsea or Manchester United?
Chelsea.
Is it? Okay. Istanbul or Ankara?
Oh, Istanbul. Ankara is ghastly. If anyone from Ankara, I'm sorry.
Döner kebab or beefsteak?
Oh, doner kebab. Absolutely. In a wrap.
In a wrap, of course. Now, when it comes to beefsteak, rare, medium, or well done?
Medium to rare.
Now, Hülya, how can people engage with you? How can they find you?
I have got my website, www.zenpro, zenpro.coach. Also, you can email me on Hülya, Hulya, @zenpro.coach. So I would like to get in touch with professionals in finance and banking who might think that would like to have a chat with me. talking about our experiences and how we can support each other. So, yeah, I would like to hear from them.
Perfect. I'm going to make sure that we have all these links and all your contact details right below the podcast so that people can get in touch with you. Well, I guess that's it for now, and thank you very much for your time to join us, Hülya, and for sharing so generously.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much for tuning into this episode. If you would like to get in touch with Hülya, you will find all her contact details and links in the podcast notes. And finally, a couple of words about the sponsor of this podcast, ProLingua Global. We are a London-based boutique language training company, and we developed a unique 5-step language coaching program that really meets the needs of busy executives and business people. It is now available in numerous languages, and it's all about making the language learning process speedy, easy, but also highly enjoyable and effective. Because what we realize is that with the help of these programs, clients start to communicate more effectively and productively with foreign colleagues and partners. They feel more confident when speaking in the target language. They are also able to follow conversations and talk freely in important situations. Plus, they also learn to understand cultural nuances and implications better. Now, natural conversations are at the core of the process, which makes the whole experience very relaxed, authentic, and lifelike. And that is why the ProLingua Global language coaching suits really well for busy business people. Our typical clients work in the financial services industry. Our overall mission is to help strengthen international business and trade relationships and directly contribute to British businesses becoming more successful in the short and long run. You can find out more on www.prolingua.global, as well as on social media. You will find all the direct links below. My name is Gabriella Ferenci, and you can find me personally on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on my personal website. Thank you very much for listening.